Couple weeks is when I've probably started feeling my best. Obviously, my ankle kind of didn't allow me to really see where my groin was at. It was, I think, my second full court workout back.
Everyone knew the transition from college to the professional ranks was going to be an uphill battle, but absolutely nobody anticipated the sheer level of dysfunction that is currently unraveling inside the Indiana Fever organization. For months, fans have watched a simmering tension build on the court, a quiet frustration masked by standard PR answers and forced smiles during post-game press conferences. But the facade has completely shattered. Newly surfaced viral footage has captured the exact moment Caitlin Clark finally reached her breaking point, absolutely exploding in the direction of the Fever coaching staff during a high-stakes game. This wasn't just a fleeting moment of annoyance over a missed call or a botched play. The visible disgust, the thrown hands, the aggressive head shaking as she walked away from the bench. It was the undeniable culmination of weeks of tactical incompetence, bizarre benchings, and a total lack of support from the people paid to lead her. The footage shows a generational talent pushed to the absolute brink, realizing that the biggest obstacle in her rookie season isn't the opposing teams, but the very system she is being forced to play within. The internet immediately caught fire, dissecting every frame of the interaction, and it has blown the lid off a massive behind-the-scenes power struggle that the franchise has been desperately trying to keep quiet. It was the moment the golden girl of basketball finally snapped, dropping the media-trained persona and showing the world exactly how toxic the environment in Indiana had truly become. For a player who thrives on passion and competitive fire, being trapped in a system that actively suppresses her instincts was a ticking time bomb, and the world just watched it detonate on national television. But that sideline eruption didn't just happen out of nowhere. It was the explosive result of a baffling tactical mismatch that has plagued the team since opening night. Head coach Christy Sides operates on a gritty, defensive-minded philosophy that belongs to an entirely different era of basketball. She demands a slow, grinding pace, prioritizing half-court sets and rigorous defensive rotations that completely neutralize the fast-break magic that made her rookie a global phenomenon. Enter Caitlin Clark, a player whose entire identity is built on a lethal, run-and-gun, transition-heavy offense that stretches the floor to its absolute limits. Watching the Fever try to execute their offense has been like watching someone try to put a Ferrari engine into a tractor. Viewers have been completely baffled by Sides' substitution patterns, repeatedly watching her yank Clark out of the game the exact second she starts getting hot or hitting deep threes. In one highly scrutinized matchup, Clark hit back-to-back unbelievable shots from the logo, shifting the entire momentum of the arena, only to be immediately subbed out by the coaching staff. The rationale given was often about missing defensive assignments, but to the basketball world, it looked like a coach actively sabotaging her own team's momentum to prove a point about who was really in charge of the roster. The viral footage of Clark yelling toward the bench perfectly encapsulates this clash. She is a basketball genius being actively suffocated by a playbook that refuses to adapt to her transcendent strengths, and her patience with the grueling process has officially evaporated. The offensive schemes looked like they were drawn up for a completely different roster, forcing a visionary point guard to dump the ball into the post and stand in the corner like a mere role player. And what happened next on the hardwood would only deepen the massive rift between the rookie and her coach, taking the conflict from strategic disagreements to personal betrayal. The physical abuse Caitlin has endured from opposing teams has been nothing short of staggering, but the real heartbreak came from her own sideline. As veterans across the league took it upon themselves to test the highly touted rookie with brutal screens, aggressive shoves, and outright cheap shots, the Indiana Fever coaching staff stood by in deafening silence. In a league where coaches routinely catch technical fouls to defend their star players, Christy Sides repeatedly folded her arms and watched the chaos unfold without intervening. When Clark was notoriously shoulder-checked to the floor in a completely unprovoked dead ball situation, the lack of retaliation or fiery defense from the Fever bench was glaring. There was no enforcer deployed from the end of the bench to send a message. There was no screaming at the referees from the head coach demanding better protection. Instead, Clark was seen looking around, seemingly realizing in real time that she was entirely on her own in this fight. Behind the scenes, rumors leaked that the coaching staff had essentially told her to stop complaining and just play through the physical contact, an approach that felt less like tough love and more like throwing her directly to the wolves. For a player who was unconditionally supported and fiercely protected by her coaching staff at Iowa, this stark reality was a bitter pill to swallow, fracturing whatever fragile trust had been established during training camp. You simply cannot expect a superstar to lay everything on the line for a coach who refuses to go to bat for them when the game turns violent. But the physical beatings were only one piece of the puzzle, leading directly to the jaw-dropping sideline meltdowns that fans are now analyzing frame by frame. If you look closely at the viral timeout clips spreading across social media, the body language tells a story far more toxic than anything said into a microphone. Lip readers on Twitter have spent hours decoding the fiery exchanges, pointing out moments where Clark appears to openly question the play calling, rolling her eyes and muttering under her breath, as the coach draws up yet another stagnant isolation play that goes nowhere. In one particularly damning clip, as the coach attempts to deliver a fiery motivational speech during a crucial fourth-quarter timeout, Clark can be seen aggressively waving her hand in dismissal, turning her back, and walking onto the floor before the huddle has even broken. This level of blatant disregard is shocking for a rookie, but it speaks volumes about the complete loss of respect for the coaching staff's basketball IQ. The tension bled right into the post-game media availability, where sides would deliver incredibly passive-aggressive quotes, subtly blaming hero ball or a lack of defensive focus for the team's struggles, thinly veiled shots directed entirely at her star point guard. It became undeniably clear that the head coach was trying to force Clark to bend to her will, while Clark was desperately trying to drag a stubborn coaching staff into the modern era of professional basketball. The psychological warfare taking place during timeouts was palpable, with veteran players awkwardly looking at the floor, while their coach and their star player engaged in a silent battle for the soul of the offense. However, this escalating power struggle wasn't just isolated to the coach and the point guard, it began infecting the entire locker room chemistry with shocking speed. You can't have a superstar actively warring with the coaching staff without collateral damage, and the rest of the Fever roster quickly found themselves caught in the crossfire of this massive ego clash. Players like Aaliyah Boston, the reigning Rookie of the Year, initially looked completely lost in the revamped, chaotic offense, struggling to find her rhythm, while the offensive schemes constantly shifted without warning. Meanwhile, veteran guard Kelsey Mitchell seemed to completely ignore the grand plan, frequently reverting to playing isolation ball and freezing Clark out of the offense entirely during crucial late-game stretches. Fans were quick to notice moments where Clark would be wide open on the perimeter calling for the ball, only to be blatantly ignored by her teammates, who were seemingly executing the coach's demands to slow the game down and play conservatively. Whispers began to circulate about a deeply divided locker room, heavily influenced by the toxic environment, fostered by a coaching staff that couldn't manage egos or establish a unified culture. Some rumors even suggested that certain veteran players were perfectly fine watching the highly hyped rookie struggle under the immense pressure, and the coaches did absolutely nothing to squash that narrative or bring the team together as a cohesive unit. Instead of building an unstoppable offense around a generational passer, the staff allowed a fractured every woman for herself mentality to take root, turning every game into an agonizing display of disjointed, selfish basketball. The lack of vocal leadership from the bench allowed petty jealousies to fester, completely derailing what should have been a historic season for the entire franchise. As the locker room quietly fractured, the executives upstairs were violently forced into absolute panic mode, realizing their massive investment was teetering on the edge of disaster. The Indiana Fever front office, led by General Manager Lynn Dunn, suddenly found themselves sitting on a powder keg of their own making. From a pure business perspective, Caitlin Clark is the greatest asset in the history of the franchise, single-handedly selling out arenas across the country, shattering merchandise records, and bringing an unprecedented influx of television revenue to the organization. But the on-court product, being managed by their hand-picked head coach, was actively threatening to derail the entire cash cow. The viral footage of Clark exploding at the staff was the absolute worst-case scenario for the executives, publicly exposing the extreme dysfunction they had been working overtime to hide from their newly acquired global fanbase. Deep inside the front office, crisis meetings were allegedly held to determine how to handle the escalating disaster without making the franchise look completely incompetent. The undeniable reality is that in professional sports, when it comes down to a choice between a franchise-altering superstar and a replaceable head coach, the coach will lose every single time, no matter how much time is left on their contract. Speculation surrounding the team exploded with reports that management was quietly compiling a shortlist of potential coaching replacements, terrified that if they didn't take drastic action soon, Clark might actually demand a trade out of Indiana. The threat of alienating the most lucrative player to ever wear a Fever jersey forced the executives into a corner, leaving them desperately trying to placate a furious superstar while figuring out how to elegantly dismantle the coaching regime they had just proudly put in place. The financial stakes were simply too astronomical to let a stubborn head coach ruin the greatest marketing phenomenon the league had ever seen. Even outside of Indiana, the rest of the basketball world was watching this slow-motion train wreck in utter disbelief, adding a massive amount of external pressure to an already explosive situation. WNBA legends, NBA superstars, and high-profile sports analysts began openly criticizing the Fever's coaching staff on national television and across every major social media platform. Heavyweights in the sports commentary world pointed out that you don't draft a player with Clark's unique, revolutionary skill set and then try to force her to play traditional, slow-down basketball from the 1990s. The outrage wasn't just coming from passionate local fans, it was coming from the absolute highest levels of the sport, including NBA champions who recognized a broken system when they saw one. Prominent figures publicly noted that the coaching staff's failure to protect her physically and empower her offensively was bordering on professional negligence, risking not only her career, but the growth of the entire league. The hashtag demanding the coach be fired trended for days at a time, following particularly brutal losses, creating a deafening roar of negativity that the franchise could no longer ignore or sweep under the rug. Fans dissected the viral sideline argument as absolute proof that Caitlin was being held hostage by an incompetent system, and the court of public opinion delivered a swift, merciless, guilty verdict against the Indiana Fever coaching staff. When the entire basketball ecosystem is pointing out that a team is actively ruining a once-in-a-lifetime talent, the pressure becomes unbearable, turning every single timeout, substitution, and post-game quote into a highly scrutinized referendum on the coach's job security. It was no longer just a local Indiana problem, it was a national sports scandal, with millions of new fans demanding accountability from a front office that seemed paralyzed by indecision. The continuous barrage of criticism exposed a deep-rooted flaw in how traditional franchises handle revolutionary talent, proving that old-school mentalities simply cannot coexist with modern greatness. For decades, the WNBA operated under a strict hierarchy where rookies were expected to quietly wait their turn, take their physical beatings, and defer entirely to the veteran establishment without uttering a single word of complaint. But this specific rookie arrived with a game that was already light years ahead of the coaching philosophies being utilized against her. By attempting to force Caitlin into a rigid, outdated mold, the coaching staff wasn't teaching her discipline. They were actively stripping away the very magic that made her the most captivating athlete in the country. Analysts began pointing out that elite coaches in other sports completely redesign their entire playbooks the moment a generational talent walks through the door, building customized systems specifically engineered to amplify their unique strengths. You wouldn't draft Patrick Mahomes and force him to run the triple option, yet the Fever were essentially doing the basketball equivalent by restricting their visionary point guard to walking the ball up the court and dumping it into crowded paint. The viral outburst wasn't a temper tantrum, it was the sheer agony of a prodigy realizing that her superiors lacked the imagination to utilize her properly. Every time the camera panned to the bench, the stark contrast between Clark's hyper-competitive urgency and the coaching staff's bewildered complacency became more agonizing to watch. It became clear that the staff viewed her unparalleled court vision as a liability rather than a lethal weapon, completely failing to grasp that the entire sport was evolving right in front of their eyes, and they were actively choosing to be left behind. This monumental clash of philosophies eventually reached a boiling point, where the physical and mental toll on the rookie became painfully visible to anyone paying attention. Observers noted that the joy and infectious energy that defined her collegiate career had been entirely drained, replaced by a hardened, exhausted demeanor that spoke volumes about the toxic grind of her rookie campaign. The constant uncalled fouls, the deliberate targeting by opponents, and the baffling strategic handcuffs placed on her by her own sideline created an atmosphere that felt overwhelmingly oppressive. The viral moment of her exploding on the coaching staff was the inevitable release valve for months of suppressed anger, a desperate cry for competent leadership in a vacuum of authority. Fans began piecing together the timeline, noting how her shooting slumps perfectly correlated with games where the coaching staff aggressively micromanaged her minutes, completely destroying her offensive rhythm. It was a vicious cycle. The coach would stifle her playmaking, the offense would stall, the team would lose, and then the coach would publicly suggest that the team needed to execute the drawn-up plays better. This gaslighting tactic enraged the fan base, who could plainly see that the drawn-up plays were fundamentally flawed and easily disrupted by even average defensive teams. The narrative shifted from questioning if Caitlin could handle the pros to questioning if the pros were actually competent enough to handle Caitlin. The entire debacle highlighted a glaring lack of preparation by the Fever organization, exposing them as a franchise that won the lottery but had absolutely no idea how to cash the ticket. The fallout from this unprecedented internal warfare has fundamentally altered the trajectory of the franchise, forcing a massive reevaluation of every single person on the payroll. The realization that their coaching staff was severely outmatched has allegedly prompted backdoor discussions with high-profile offensive coordinators and veteran head coaches who understand how to orchestrate a high-octane, space and pace offense. The front office knows that if they allow this toxic dynamic to continue into another season, they risk inflicting permanent psychological damage on their superstar and destroying the team's chemistry beyond repair. Veteran players on the roster are also feeling the heat, realizing that their refusal to adapt to the new system or support their point guard could easily result in them being traded away to make room for players who actually want to run the floor. The viral explosion on the sideline served as the ultimate catalyst for change, stripping away the polite PR statements and laying bare the urgent need for a complete cultural overhaul inside the building. The fans have drawn their line in the sand, explicitly making it known that their loyalty lies entirely with the player, not the